The assignment was, as always, absurdly simple on paper. Descend to the backwater planet, acquire one of its primitive bipeds, and return for study. I accepted with what I now recognize as dangerous eagerness. You must understand, when one belongs to an advanced expeditionary fleet spanning 12 galaxies, the idea of examining a species that still burns liquefied fossils for propulsion is more comedy than science. The humans call it gasoline. We call it evidence of arrested development. And yet command wanted data. So I, the most efficient mind of this vessel, was dispatched to collect it. Humans are not without charm in their dysfunction. They invent edible discs called hamburgers, which they consume with something resembling religious fervor. They watch endless hours of so-called reality television, though what reality it depicts is never made clear. We intercepted one transmission involving a competition where contestants consume insects for prizes. Another series featured the mating rituals of strangers trapped in a dwelling. It was billed as authentic. If that is reality, then they deserve study only as a cautionary tale. Their communications rely heavily on symbols called emojis, crude pictographs that somehow convey sarcasm, lust, and despair in equal measure. Such a species cannot possibly threaten a mind like mine. At least, that was the posture I maintained then. The chosen specimen was identified through routine scans. A lone male, 36 planetary years, was observed beside a riverbank surrounded by dense trees. He had erected a flimsy structure of fabric over metal rods, and he seemed content to watch the fire he had kindled with chemical accelerants. His heart rate was steady, his respiration calm. He neither broadcast signals nor carried advanced devices. Our analysts assured me this was the ideal subject. Docile, isolated, easily replaced if necessary. We predicted 0 complications. I recall sneering as our vessel descended, cloaked through the humid air. My subordinates shifted anxiously in their harnesses. They worried about weather patterns and atmospheric anomalies. I reminded them we were not abducting a Star Fortress commander, but a mammal who still debates whether pineapple belongs on pizza. They pretended to understand my cultural reference. They did not. The beam engaged flawlessly. One instant the man sat poking the embers of his campfire. The next he lay suspended in amber light, rising toward our craft. He did not struggle. His eyes closed, head lolling as though he had merely chosen to sleep. I remarked, with what I now realize was premature triumph, "See how easily the apex predator submits." The others laughed dutifully. During transfer, I noted a curious twitch at the corner of his mouth. My assistant suggested neural misfiring. Another claimed it was muscular relaxation. I considered neither explanation worthy of attention. After all, humans display many odd spasms. Laughter at poorly timed intervals, facial grimaces intended as friendliness, entire dances devoted to something they call TikTok. Why should this twitch matter? Within the vessel, the man was placed upon the restraint table. Paralysis fields engaged. Instruments confirmed containment. His vital signs remained boringly consistent. My medic scanned cranial patterns, already preparing to write a treatise on limited neural capacity. "Their brains are wide but shallow," he said, "like puddles reflecting light." I agreed. That description seemed poetic enough for primitive meat. Yet even as we secured the chamber, I felt a faint ripple of disquiet. The man's breathing pattern was not random. It aligned strangely with our atmospheric cycling units, as if he had noted the rhythm. His eyelids flickered once, though the paralysis should have prevented voluntary motion. Still, I dismissed it. I have always been too rational to indulge suspicion. The simplest answer is usually correct, and the simplest answer was that our subject was unconscious. I attempted to distract myself by cataloging further evidence of human absurdity. On Earth, they worship beings in colorful costumes known as superheroes, despite none of them possessing abilities beyond financial excess. They produce entire subcultures devoted to reenacting fictional battles with toy blades. They believe microwaves, yes, the same energy we use for precision mapping, are best employed to heat burritos filled with artificial cheese. Such examples are plentiful and delightful. It was easy, then, to forget that any individual might diverge from statistical expectation. Nevertheless, one of my junior officers, the youngest, raised a question. What if this one is different? His voice trembled, though he tried to hide it. I scolded him for cowardice. Do you imagine he will suddenly sprout fangs and claws? These mammals are fragile. Their skin blisters under their own sun. A fall from moderate height breaks them. They perish from diseases contracted by raw poultry. The only reason they dominate their planet is because the rest of its creatures are even more incompetent. He lowered his eyes and said no more. I remember the exact moment we completed initial calibration of the observation chamber. Lights dimmed to the optimal spectrum. Monitors displayed neural activity flattening into predictable waves. Everything appeared orderly. My arrogance reached its summit. I even began drafting the report in my mind, already anticipating commendations for efficiency. And then the twitch again, this time more pronounced. His lips curved briefly, unmistakably, into what humans call a smile. Not unconscious reflex, not muscular spasm. A deliberate expression, the kind they use to signal amusement, challenge, or knowledge withheld. I felt a chill despite the chamber's stable temperature. My medic noticed it too, shifting uncomfortably but saying nothing. None wished to question my authority. I leaned closer, examining the lines of his face. He looked ordinary. Unkempt hair, skin marked by sun, faint scars across one arm. A creature shaped by trivial battles with his environment. And yet the smile persisted as though he occupied a separate conversation, one we were not privy to. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself 1,000 rational explanations. But the truth, which I now confess though it damages my pride, is that something in that curve of lips unsettled me more than any battlefield could. We sealed the chamber and initiated data collection. The man remained still, smiling faintly even in enforced paralysis. The others whispered about muscle fatigue. I silenced them. Still, as the door closed and the hum of the instruments filled the air, I could not escape the sensation that he knew something about us, about this vessel, about what was to come. And so our mission's first stage ended not with triumph, but with unease. We had captured the human, yes. We had secured him in restraints, yes. But the smirk on his face lingered in my mind like an echo in a dark corridor. For reasons I could not articulate, I suddenly longed for the noisy absurdities of their world, their reality shows, their duct tape, their foolish contests, anything but the silence of that smile. It was only a beginning, yet already it did not feel like victory. It felt like the opening move in a game I did not understand, one in which we had mistaken the rules entirely. And somewhere, deep beneath my confidence, the first strand of fear began to weave itself into place. The paralysis field should have kept him inert for several planetary hours. That was the calculation, confirmed by centuries of research on lesser species. Yet before we had completed the preliminary diagnostics, his eyelids opened. Slowly, deliberately, like a predator waking not from weakness, but from decision. My officers froze. The medic dropped his instrument, producing a clatter that echoed obscenely in the sterile chamber. I was, of course, annoyed rather than afraid. Fear belonged to lesser intellects. And still, I felt my throat tighten when the human's gaze found me. He did not scream. He did not thrash or plead. Instead, he smiled, that same maddening curve I had witnessed during abduction. Then he spoke. His voice carried no tremor. "So," he said, scanning our group, "who's in charge here? You with the shoulders? Or the quiet one with 4 eyes who hasn't stopped fidgeting?" His tone was casual, conversational, as though we were guests interrupting his camping trip rather than captors dissecting him. My instinct was to silence him, to assert dominance. Protocol dictated we ignore vocalizations until cognitive mapping began. Yet something in his phrasing pinned me. He had noticed the medic's nervous movement, something even I had overlooked. His assessment was correct. My subordinate flushed a sickly shade and shifted behind me. The human chuckled softly, a sound with no apparent fear. "I assume this is your operating theater," he continued. "Nice symmetry. Not much for decor, though." He tilted his head, eyes drifting across the chamber. Cameras tucked into the corners, 3 functional, 1 with a flicker. "Someone should fix that." My engineer bristled. He glanced reflexively toward the faulty lens. The human's observation was accurate. An energy conduit had caused a minor disturbance last cycle. How could he have seen it? Paralyzed upon the table, I dismissed the question before it could fully form. Coincidence, I told myself. Human eyesight is limited. His statement must have been a lucky guess. Still, I ordered the crew to maintain composure, to proceed. We initiated a deeper paralysis surge, expecting his speech to falter. It did not. He kept speaking, unhurried. "Interesting frequency you've got running through these restraints." I felt it buzzing along my nerves on the way up. "Took me a while to match the rhythm with your engine pulses. Now I think I've got the cadence right." The medic whispered, "Impossible." He could not remain conscious under induction. His voice cracked as though he knew the words convinced no one. I stepped forward, determined to reclaim authority. "Specimen, you are not permitted to." He interrupted with a small shake of his head. "Specimen? That's cold. My name's irrelevant. But if you need a label, try guest." He smiled again. "I'll already figure out who you are, anyway. You must be the leader." Sharp voice. Bad at hiding irritation. "The others keep glancing at you for cues. You've got the arrogance of a middle manager." Not a compliment. The insult struck deeper than I expected. Middle manager? The term made little sense to me, but his confidence in using it was destabilizing. My officers tried to laugh, but their chuckles sounded forced, brittle. The human noticed, eyes flicking from one to another. He was cataloging us, dissecting us in return. I attempted to reframe the encounter. "You are subject number 34 in our study of terrestrial organisms. Remain silent. Your cooperation ensures painless observation." He tilted his head, as if amused. "Observation goes both ways. Did you know that?" His eyes glinted. "While you thought you were putting me under, I was wide awake counting. Step counts from my camp to your craft. Vibration patterns in your hull. Breathing rhythms of your crew. I've got a decent map of this place already." That statement, more than any other, chilled the room. The engineer's jaw clenched. The medic whispered a quiet prayer to the algorithms. I insisted, for everyone's sake, delusion. His mind is conjuring fantasies to mask terror. Yet his tone contained no terror. It contained certainty. And behind his eyes, I saw calculation, as if he were solving equations written across our very walls. He continued without pause. "Let me guess the lineup. You," he nodded toward my medic, "doctor, nervous type, probably wishing you'd stayed home. You, engineer, though not a very good one, judging by that faulty panel behind your station. And you." His gaze landed on me. He held it far too long. "Commander, or at least you like to think so. You speak with authority, but your crew obeys more from habit than respect." Silence thickened. The engineer checked the panel behind him. A loose connection sparked faintly, exactly as the human predicted. The medic looked at me as if I had already failed. And for the first time in many cycles, I doubted myself. Determined to recover dignity, I ordered the neuroscan to maximum depth. Rays swept over his cranium, analyzing synaptic firings. The display was expected to show primitive simplicity. Instead, it revealed layered structures beyond projection models. Patterns overlapped, recursive and chaotic, like storms folding into one another. My scientists exchanged frantic whispers. I snapped at them to record without interpretation. Still, my own thoughts betrayed me. How could a human brain generate such density? The man noticed our consternation. He smirked. "Complicated, huh? Don't worry. Even back home, they don't like scanning me too much. Makes the machines overheat." He said it so lightly, but the timing of his words coincided with a flicker across our monitor. For an instant, the image glitched, fractal distortions rippling outward. The medic recoiled. The engineer cursed. The man chuckled again, as if he had orchestrated the effect. I maintained my mask. "You are anomalous. That is all. An aberration among your kind. Maybe," he said, "or maybe not. See, I've spent some time in, let's call it counterintelligence. Learn to analyze systems, probe for weaknesses. Military background, too, though I retired. These days I do security testing. People pay me to break into their own facilities and show them where they're vulnerable. Funny job, but it keeps the brain sharp. The admission rang with menace. My crew shifted, exchanging uncertain looks. One asked timidly, "Commander, is this possible?" I silenced him with a glare, though inwardly I asked the same. The man leaned his head back against the table, calm, patient, as though everything proceeded according to a plan only he understood. "By the way," he added casually, "I've already sent a message." The words detonated like a weapon. The chamber erupted with overlapping protests. "Impossible! Communications blocked," shouted the engineer. "Our dampening field prevents external signals," insisted the medic. I forced composure. "Lies. He seeks to destabilize us." But his smile widened, almost sympathetic. "You think you're the only ones who study signals? That's cute." My confidence wavered, cracks forming in the armor of superiority. I wanted to declare victory, to remind myself of our superiority. Instead, I found myself staring at him, unable to dismiss the feeling that he was not our subject at all. He was our observer, and as the chamber lights flickered for the first time in many cycles, I realized the balance of control had begun to shift. The man's eyes gleamed in the dimness. He whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, right on schedule. The scan should have silenced him, reducing his mind to a set of patterns we could classify, catalog, and dismiss. Instead, it betrayed us. The images that shimmered across our monitors were not the shallow ripples we had charted in earlier specimens, but deep tides, layered storms of thought folding into themselves. My officers argued in hushed tones. One insisted the equipment was faulty, another that the specimen's brain chemistry was contaminated. I said nothing. My pride demanded explanation, but my eyes saw only chaos too intricate for error. The human lay still, eyes half-lidded, wearing that infuriating smile, as if he could sense our confusion. "Complicated, isn't it?" he murmured, voice relaxed, almost pitying. "Don't beat yourselves up. Machines back home can't read me cleanly either. Makes the sensors run hot." I had to sign waivers. He laughed, soft and unhurried. The sound made my scales prickle. He should have been terrified, begging, cursing. Instead, he narrated his own enigma like a teacher correcting slow students. My medic tried to regain confidence. "Your cortex is irregular, that is all. Mutations occur. You are not representative of your species." The human turned his head, eyes glinting with quiet amusement. "If that helps you sleep at night, keep telling yourself. But deep down, you know I'm not a fluke. You've seen the cracks already." I demanded clarity. "What cracks?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he quoted a line from one of their absurd entertainments, a film if I recall correctly. "You ever see The Matrix?" he asked, though of course none of us had. "You're poking at shadows on the wall, but I've already walked outside." His tone suggested a private joke, a reference we were too ignorant to appreciate. My engineer whispered, "Commander, he speaks nonsense." But nonsense should not sting. And yet it did, because even without context his words carried weight, like riddles whose answers hover just beyond grasp. We attempted behavioral tests. Lights flashed, sounds pulsed, stimuli designed to provoke reflexes. He anticipated each one, glancing toward the exact emitter a heartbeat before activation. He smiled at the cameras as though aware of their sequence. Once, as the engineer prepared to trigger a shock impulse, the human spoke casually, "Careful with that. Your console's grounding is weak. You'll fry your own circuits before you fry me." The engineer froze, unwilling to continue, for indeed the grounding panel sparked faintly, exactly as predicted. Every demonstration undermined my command. My subordinates shifted from derision to unease. Even I felt the grip of dread creeping into the edges of thought. Yet I clung to logic. He is guessing. Probability favors him on occasion. But the guesses piled into a structure too precise to dismiss. He described the medic's childhood tremor in one hand, deduced from the way he handled instruments. He noted the engineer's resentment toward me. judging by micro-expressions when I gave orders. He even dissected me. You speak with confidence, but it's theater. You keep repeating phrases to convince yourself. A habit, isn't it? My throat tightened. He had stripped me bare in front of my crew. Still, I tried to rally. You claim knowledge, but you remain restrained. You are helpless. All your observations mean nothing if you cannot act. He looked at me for a long moment, eyes steady, then said quietly, "You think action only means moving. That's your mistake." The words rattled me. My crew muttered nervously. I ordered silence. Yet the human's point lingered. Even motionless, he was shifting the balance. When we resumed the scan, the monitors reacted violently, waves of interference crashing across the displays. Alarms chirped. My medic panicked, insisting the subject was destabilizing the equipment. I demanded adjustments. Nothing worked. The human only chuckled, quoting again, "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room." Another obscure reference, yet the timing was cruelly perfect as our chamber filled with discord. The engineer whispered, "Commander, he manipulates us. He knows our systems." I silenced him, but the thought had already spread. The human tilted his head, eyes fixed on the dark lens above. "Funny thing about your scanner," he said conversationally. "It's not just a one-way probe. Anything that maps me, I can map back. Waves go both directions. Didn't your bright scientist think of that?" My medic sputtered denials. My engineer swore under his breath. I remained rigid, unwilling to acknowledge the possibility. Yet the failing equipment spoke for itself. He continued calmly, as though lecturing a classroom. "You've got redundancies, sure, but nothing's perfect. I've already sketched half your ship in my head. Power distribution, command routing, weak links. Give me a little time, and I could probably walk you through your own schematics." The chamber went deathly quiet. Every officer glanced at me, desperate for reassurance. I found none. I attempted one last assertion of control. "Your words are bravado. Empty noise." But he ignored me, speaking instead to the room itself. "You've hidden yourselves well. Cloaks, dampeners, fancy toys. But Earth has eyes sharper than you think. You believe we're primitive because it's useful for us to look that way. Cheap disguises. Misdirection. You're not the only ones who play at being small while building something big behind the curtain." The implication struck like a blow. For centuries, we had monitored their transmissions, watched them squabble about reality television and burritos, convinced of their childishness. Could all be theater? My certainty cracked. He closed his eyes then, speaking almost idly. "I used to run penetration tests for agencies you've never heard of. Break into systems, find the cracks, report back. Did the same thing overseas, under other names. Funny career. You learn to see patterns others miss. You learn how easy it is to make someone feel safe while you're already in their vault." His calmness was terrifying. Not the rage of a trapped animal, but the confidence of one who knows he is not trapped at all. The medic whispered, "Commander, what if he's telling the truth? What if others?" I snapped enough, but my own conviction faltered. The human opened his eyes again, meeting mine directly. "I told you before, I sent a message. That wasn't a bluff. While you dragged me up here, I piggybacked on your own pulses. A simple modulation. Someone on the ground heard me. Maybe a few someones. By now, they'll be watching you, even if you can't see them." The crew erupted in panic. "Impossible," shouted the engineer. "We detect." He cut him off smoothly. "You won't detect what you don't believe exists." And as if summoned by his words, the lights dimmed, flickering in a rhythm eerily close to his breathing pattern. My medic's hand shook. The engineer swore again, furiously adjusting panels. I stood frozen, my arrogance unraveling strand by strand. The human smiled once more, but this time it was softer, almost compassionate. "Relax. It's just beginning. You thought you were studying me. But really, I've been studying you. And trust me, class isn't over yet." The chamber fell into silence. The monitors pulsed with unreadable shapes. My officers avoided my eyes. I had been so sure of human weakness, and now I was unsure of everything. For the first time in centuries of service, I wondered if the hunter had become the prey. The chamber lights shivered, then died to a dull glow. For a moment, only the faint pulse of our own Respirators filled the air. My engineer cursed and hammered at his console, but the screen before him remained black. The medic fumbled with instruments, his trembling hands making a mockery of precision. I tried to hold my posture, to embody command, but the silence pressed against me like a vacuum, exposing the fragility beneath my arrogance. On the table, the human did not move. He did not need to. His eyes tracked the failing lights as though he had scripted their descent. "Your systems are strong," he said softly, voice almost tender, but strength without awareness is brittle. All it takes is a push in the right spot. His gaze swept the chamber, resting on each of us in turn. "I think you already know that." I wanted to snarl to deny him. Yet my engineer's frantic adjustments sparked in protest, smoke curling from the edges of the panel. The human smiled faintly. He had predicted this failure hours earlier, and we had laughed. Now no one was laughing. We abandoned diagnostics and rushed to restore command links. Every attempt was denied by the ship's own AI, which now repeated a single phrase in our tongue. Access restricted. Restricted to whom? Restricted by whom? My subordinates shouted at one another. I barked orders, but my voice had lost its force. Authority means little when the walls themselves refuse to obey. The human remained the still center of the storm, offering commentary like a sports announcer. See, that's the trouble with centralized systems. Once you get in at the root, everything else dances to your tune. Doesn't matter how many passwords or retinal scans you stack on top. You thought your AI was a guardian. Turns out, it's just another lock waiting for the right key. The medic gasped. "He is doing this while restrained." I snapped back. "Impossible. He cannot access." But the evidence was undeniable. Corridors beyond our chamber sealed with a groan of metal, echoing down the hall. One by one, sectors of the ship fell silent, cut off from our command net. I could almost see the shape of his influence spreading outward like frost across glass. "Don't think of it as sabotage," he continued, calm as ever. "Think of it as a stress test. You wanted to know what humans can do. Well, this is me doing very little. Just thinking, really. Imagine what the others might be up to." The words struck with the weight of inevitability. The medic whispered, "Others? He cannot mean." The man chuckled. "You really believed we'd show you all our cards? That NASA was the limit of our reach. That we broadcast sitcoms and game shows because that's the best we can do? Cute. Really cute. But Earth learned a long time ago to play small when predators are watching." My stomach coiled with dread. All those years of monitoring their absurd broadcasts, their chaotic politics, their endless squabbling. Was it camouflage? A masquerade performed for eyes like ours? My pride fought against the idea, but doubt had already rooted itself deep. The engineer shouted over the failing consoles. "Commander, propulsion is offline. We cannot even steer." The human's voice was almost sympathetic. "I told you earlier, observation goes both ways. While you were mapping me, I was mapping you. Your AI didn't know the difference between a scan and a handshake. Once you open that door, it doesn't close again." My medic clutched his instruments as though they were charms. "Commander, we must terminate him now." Terminate. The word hung heavy. Yet as I studied the man, still smiling faintly, I realized how hollow the suggestion was. Restraints meant nothing. He did not require freedom of movement. His weapon was his mind, and it was already inside every corridor, every lock system. To kill the body now would be like smashing a console after it had uploaded its data. Too late. I forced myself to speak. "What do you want from us?" The human tilted his head, expression unreadable. "Want? That's the wrong question. I'm not here to take. I'm here to remind you. You're not the only ones peeking into the dark. Earth has been peeking back. We know you. We've always known you. We just let you think otherwise." The medic collapsed into his chair, muttering in disbelief. The engineer stared at me with eyes that accused me of failure. I could no longer deny it. Control had slipped from my hands. The human closed his eyes briefly, then spoke again, voice softer now, almost reflective. "Do you know what makes us dangerous? It's not muscle, not claws or fangs. It's that we don't follow anyone. Not kings, not gods, not even our own better judgment. We fracture, We argue, we resist. Even our alphas can't keep the pack in line. And that chaos, well, it looks like weakness, doesn't it? But it's freedom. You can't predict freedom. You can't contain it. His words struck deeper than threats. They were philosophy sharpened into a blade. I had spent this entire mission convinced of their inferiority, mocking their television shows, their duct tape, their ridiculous cultural idols. Yet in this moment, I saw it clearly. What I had dismissed as disorder was precisely what made them ungovernable. The ship groaned again as bulkheads sealed. Our crew were scattered, isolated, each screaming over comms before the channels died. I stood at the edge of the humans' table, suddenly very small. If Earth is as you say, then what will become of us? I asked. He opened his eyes and fixed me with a steady gaze. That depends. Maybe nothing. Maybe you'll vanish, like all the other hunters who thought we were prey. Or maybe you'll adapt. Hard to say. We're unpredictable even to ourselves. His calmness chilled me more than any open threat. The medic whispered, "Commander, he means to destroy us." But I knew better. Destruction was too narrow a word. This was revelation. This was a mirror forced before our eyes, showing us not dominance, but hubris. The lights flickered once more, then stabilized at half their usual strength. The ship's AI spoke again, but not in our tongue. It spoke in his. A simple phrase, system reconfigured, awaiting new parameters. The human smiled, satisfied. There, now your ship knows what it feels like to take orders from someone else. I could not speak. My throat constricted, pride shattered. We had come to dissect him. Yet here we were, dissected in turn, our every weakness laid bare. And as I stared at him, still restrained, still utterly in control, I understood the truth of his final words. They don't follow me. They don't follow anyone. In that moment, I, who had thought humans laughable, felt something far worse than fear. I felt humility.